Okay, it's been a minute since I actually made a video. I just finished Severance and it kind of inspired me to come back and do a little like halfway check-in. So this is my 6 months update.
A little different than all the rest.
So I've read 24 books total, and today is June 5th. Just finished Severance by Ling Ma, so that's the last book I read. Definitely a 5 out of 5 for me. I know there's like opinions. People like this is like a 3-star book, 4-star book. I really enjoyed, not even enjoyed, it was a very distinct reading experience. So like the story follows Candace Jen. She's like a Chinese first gen daughter of immigrants. It just like resonated. A lot of the stuff resonated as someone who is like not even a first gen, I'm an immigrant. Like I wasn't born here. It kind of skips time, if that makes sense. So one chapter is like how her life in New York was changing as a result of like this big virus. Is not a spoiler, that basically is like wiping everyone around her, and it's kind of like her being a witness to all this, slowly seeing her city shutting down. Like she is a transplant in New York, the fact that like she has no one basically to turn to, and then finally she joins this group of people trying to like survive. So we get like how she left New York, but how she joined this group as well, and then overall thoughts about finding like belonging, love and meaning in all the arbitrary. Basically I feel like it could be a larger allegory for like the US, immigrating into the US, but also labor and corporate America too. I felt like very claustrophobic and very like anxious reading this book, because that's like the point. So I really liked Ling Ma's writing. I want to read more of her stuff because it feels like this like satirical retelling of like, you're like, she's like, you know what I'm talking about, but it's like the world has been wiped out. Actually, like I thought this came out after COVID, but it sounds like it came out 2018, so it was pre-COVID. It's just like really interesting. It was like a year before COVID is when this book was published. And then I read the last 2 series of this book my friend and I like. It's a translation of Chinese book. It's called The Scum Villain Self-Saving System by MXCX, and I really enjoyed the last book, even though like the book ended on the 3rd. The 4th book was like sort of short stories, like what is it called, side stories essentially, and that was really really fun. And then the next one I read was Love That Dog, because everybody and their mother has been like hyping up that book, specifically like writers or people that just love reading. They're like, Sharon Creech, Love That Dog. First of all, it was like a very short book, like so little, which is not the problem. I think I just didn't really get it. Maybe I read it at the wrong time or something. It was fine. It was fine. It was about loss. It was about like understanding of relationships with like other beings as like a child essentially. So I think this would have hit if I read it when I was younger or something. I think that one of the most challenging books I've read was Marcel Proust's Swann's Way, because I've been hearing about Proust for a while, and I really like flowery language writing in the right, if it's the right one. I mean, Proust writes, I don't know if you've read anything by Proust, he writes very like flowery language, because it's a lot of translated from French, I'm pretty sure. So the original language is in French, and French is a very flowery language. The experience felt like character study more than plot driven, and so I like the writing was incredible, like beautiful. It's a story of like specific French societies, like aristocratic societies that have specific class. So it's a very specific story about like this guy named Swann, and it's sort of like his realization, his positionality, his understanding of the society that he's in, and like also his relationship with like envy and jealousy. Like it's a lot of themes that it hits on, but at the end of the day, it's like one of the most beautiful proses I've read in a really long time. And then I read Women Who Think Too Much by Susan Noel Hokishma. I'm a woman who thinks too much. It was okay. It was okay. Nothing like wildly world breaking. So the reading experience was not enjoyable. Let me just say that. I've had this book on hold for like maybe for 6 months because it got really popular because of Pinterest or something. I read it. It was fine. It was nothing that I haven't heard before. Not that I was trying to get that. Sometimes you want like a confirmation bias of thoughts that you already have. So that's kind of the main reason I wanted to read it. And I was also not trying to read books that are like self-help-ish. Not that I don't like books like that, I do. But it's like, I don't know. I was like, I'm tired of learning about myself. And I read Nick and Charlie by like Alice Oseman. If you know like the graphic novel Heartstoppers, is like, this is an actual like novel like of it. I don't know if like what the timeline of it is, if the novella came before the graphic novel or if she wrote it later because it got so popular. I think the graphic novels are a very important element of Heartstoppers, and specifically the Nick and Charlie story. This is me. I don't think their story has like that much of a depth for it to be a novella. It was fine. I just realized, it kind of made me realize that I really like the graphic novel experience of Heartstoppers, and that was what got me hooked. And I love the show too, you know, so it was okay. I think one of my favorite books that I've read this year, and it's kind of early to call it, is Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Recommended this book to everyone. First of all, it's a book that my sister got from like a second hand book place like a couple of years ago. Like, it was just on our bookshelf, and I was like, let me just pick this book up because I needed like something new that I don't know much about. Because you know, sometimes like the way booktubers, like everything just feels like it's like turnover. Like, Celery is really popular, read everything that she's written. Like when I was younger, the library was sort of a refuge, like a sanctuary for my sister and I. My dad worked 7 times out of the week. On a good week, he worked like maybe 5 times out of the week. And so my sister and I spent a lot of time at the public library. We were also immigrants to this country, so the library was a big part of like our sanctuary. At the time, there wasn't this culture of like looking up books. Like, you don't really look up books and be like, oh, like what is this book about? Like, there wasn't an extensive reaction, or like a booktuber is not talking about it, because that niche did not really exist in that way. Maybe blogs and stuff had it, but like I was too young. So you go to the library, you ask a librarian, and you say like, is this book good? Or you just like kind of read the little synopsis in the back, or like you have your like genre you like, and you kind of like, oh, I like this book, and that's how we chose books. I sound like hella old right now, but like that's how we did it. Tomorrow was essentially me trying to re-emphasize or re-highlight that experience of choosing a book with not a lot of information in my brain, and it worked. It was so good. The reading experience was so enjoyable. It was fiction, so it was, but like it had like larger stuff around like disability justice, friendship, resentment, paired with like deep love for each other. Gaming is like a big part of it, but you don't really have to be a gamer or anything. But like the reading experience was hella enjoyable, and I had a moment of like, okay, what's next, Gabrielle? Or like anyone really, because it just, you know, when you read a book and it kind of just makes you like, okay, what's next? That's how I felt with Severance. I definitely want something a little bit more happier and less claustrophobic, but that's how I felt with Tomorrow. Highly recommend it if you want a fiction that you don't have to like think too much about. Well, like you have to, but like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's exciting, it's fun. Like the world building is so fucking good. And also you care about the characters. That's the other thing. I deeply care for the characters at the end, even if they're very flawed people. And they reminded me of my friends, the dynamic I have with my friends. Chef's kiss. Wait, what is the next one I read? Oh, Your Money or Your Life. I'm still like working on a relationship with money in my life. This year has been a whirlwind of new things, and when new things happen, I get overstimulated, so I needed something to like kind of ground me. And like financial literacy is one of those places that really ground me, because I don't know a lot about it. I'm just going in with like the most understimulated brain, and like I just get that. And that's what this was. Okay, so I really like the beginning because it talked a lot about like the labor, and like specifically labor in the Western world, and how you are valued, and how like how worth is kind of given in the Western world is according to the job you have or the title that you have. And I thought that was really interesting, but then like the later kind of became really universalized advice, which less favorite. The beginning, the first 30% of the book, really, really good. And I enjoyed it. I actually made a whole video about like how America is like a purgatory for laborers. One of my friends, they recommended this book called The Queer Art of Failure. First of all, let me actually get the physical. So this is the book. The Queer Art of Failure. Looks very unassuming, right? Everything is highlighted or written on. So I am an emerging filmmaker. I've been like making videos and stuff and being creative for a very long time, even before when I was able to call myself a creative. One of my friends who is just like things in a lot of disruptive way of being and exists in a very disruptive way, in a good way. And as someone who's an eldest daughter of an immigrant household, I have to do certain things even if I don't want them, right? And this book is about failure. It's like the history of failure, but also like it's like analytical as well. It's deeply analytical. There's this conversation of like, how do you measure your worth as a human being? And so it uses SpongeBob, it uses Pixar as a way to kind of like highlight some of these seemingly simplistic but like very complex like practices of being socialized as a female, or like what does it mean to be rooted in failure, and as someone who sees failure as like the big bad, you know, whatever. Not just me, but like a lot of people do, but specifically for me, failure means lack of survival, and that's how I see it. So it just like broke my brain as I've used the last couple of years trying to find like what I really like and what I enjoy and decenter myself from labor on all these things. And I don't know how to tell you. I wish I could put in words exactly this book into your brain. I want to do actually a whole review about it. It just talks about how like it's not just like the patriarchy or like all these things, but it's about like mastery and like productiveness as things that or like give you the metric of humanness. And it's abstract a lot of the time, and other ways it's really, really not abstract. Talks a lot about delinking queerness specifically, and queerness can stand on its own in so many different ways. Delinking your queerness from optimism or rainbow culture. And it's not just talking about gay pride or anything else like that, but it's like talking about capitalism. It talks about like how imperialism at its deepest roots, one of its symptoms is like optimism, and like I don't know what to tell you, but like this book changed my life. And I know that's like a big claim, but like this book, my friend, they have a podcast and they were like, we can talk about this book for like 2 hours. And I was like, yeah, we can. It was an eBay copy, so the person who had it before me, they had like a little annotation in like Arabic. I can talk about this book for years, okay? But yeah, that is one of my favorite books and one of the books that I finished and completed this year. And then I read Self-Reliance by Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's very short. Essentially it's an excerpt of collected essays. It was, you know, I feel like this is my second or third Ralph Waldo Emerson book, and I am just realizing I don't really like his style of writing. I like the concept, the larger concepts. I just don't really like the style of writing. So there's that. And then I read The World Keeps Ending and the World Goes On by Franny Choi, which is a book of poems. And I read it when actually the inauguration happened in the US. And I was kind of like, I need something that kind of restates or reiterates that what we're going through right now is not like unprecedented, because I know in my mind, but I was like, I need something creative to just read that's not like, you know, imperialism in the US. I don't want that. My sister recommended two books, two authors for me, Clarice Lispector and Melissa Broder. So the first one was So Sad Today, which is a personal essay by Melissa Broder. So like my sister warned me before I started this book. It was like kind of like a little unhinged. Like I was kind of like, yeah, I'm just gonna read this book and I don't know much about it. oh my god, it was so like naked, it was so raw, it was too raw, I felt too real. I mean, it's like her stories, but like it's about her addiction, it's about how she sees herself, it's about her low self-esteem. It's just very relatable, resonating. But I was like, girl, you're putting your name near this. But maybe that's just my discomfort with like sharing too much. The reading experience was really uncomfortable because I felt like when someone is like trauma dumping on you, that's what it feels like. But it was so, I could not put it down. I finished this book in 3 hours. Like, I was like, girl, Melissa. But my sister was like, that is so Melissa. I was like, all right, I don't need to read any more of her. Not because I don't like her writing, it's just too raw, and I don't know if that's my type of writing for me. Just keep a little behind. That's me, because I'm an avoidant. And then I read Agua Viva by Clarice Lispector, which is a stream of consciousness type of writing. Clarice is I believe she's Brazilian Ukrainian. Don't quote me on that. But she passed like long ago. But she's known for having this not really plot driven, but more like, yeah, it's Sunday, and Sunday is weird because you have to do this, but it's like very poetic and very beautiful. Every time I was like reading, like each page I was like writing. I was like, okay, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. Like how she had a lot of things about like failure, and she had a lot of things. Oh my god, I can like read you the whole thing. But when I read, I keep track of like my like the writing of the author in these like little notebooks. So let's see if I can find Clarice, because it's basically like everything goes. Oh yeah. So look at this. So she said, I want the glory of failure. Let failure annihilate me. Like everything she says is so beautiful. It's just very matter of factly, but you're still like beautiful. My tiredness comes often because I'm an extremely busy person. Like, you know what she means. It's really easy stuff, but you're like, yeah. She said, the exchange of breath is one of the most beautiful things that I've ever heard about life. Can I violate death? Life is supernatural, but life is also deadly. Does what I can't see exist? What I am writing to you is not for reading, it is for being. I feel like that really summarizes Clarice Lispector, but I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed it so much that I read The Hour of the Star, which is another book that Clarice wrote. She has written many books. This one actually has a plot. It's about this girl who just like hates herself essentially, like, and lives in a really bad condition, and it kind of follows her. It's very sad actually. It's very, very sad, and I enjoyed that. I definitely want to read more Clarice books. And then I read Zadie Smith's Intimation. I've never read Zadie Smith. My friend just read NW, I think, and she said it wasn't that good. But Intimations is a book of essays, like a small book of essays that was written at the height of the pandemic, and it's really, really good. I also wrote a lot of like, let me show you. Oh my god. Let's see. You see, this is Zadie Smith. Okay. She said, manic desire to do something, tapestry of stories. It's hard to fill all the time with sufficiency, giving the suffering of others. There's this big systemic stuff that she's dealing with, like around being Black, being an immigrant person, having immigrant roots, having like wealth and like well-being while others are suffering around her. She said, writing is something to do just like making banana bread or running. I really love that. And then I read, oh my god, my sister gave me this book like 2 years ago, 2 Christmases ago. It's called Blood Child, Octavia Butler's short stories. I love this book. Oh my god, I love this book. So this is the only short story book, and she talks at the beginning and the prologue about why she doesn't like short stories, but she's like, what, might as well. Girly things. I'm sure she doesn't say that, but like that's how I read it. My favorite thing about it is that like, so it's short stories, these like larger allegorical things that speak about like race relations and belonging, the patriarchy. And then she says, you don't have to guess what it's about, I'll tell you at the end. So at the end she has like a 1.5 page description of like what she meant by that story and what inspired the story. It's a really beautiful writing, and it's really fun. even though there were like some really, it's just like she writes like Afrofuturism, science fiction writing, so she just goes with it, and it works so well. It works so well. I love it. And then I read Barracoon, The Story of the Last Cargo by Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston was an anthropologist, essentially. She was a cultural anthropologist, and I feel like we don't talk about that as much. We talk about her authorship, but she's a cultural anthropologist. So she basically interviewed a man like over the course of like a couple of months, I believe, where she just came to his home and she just interviewed him, and she saw his life kind of move through like a bunch of different tragedies, a bunch of different things, losses, but also a lot of joys. And she comes to his house and he like farms and he gives her food and she brings fish and they talk, and sometimes they don't. And it's a tapestry of that through Zora's like perspective specifically, and I just really enjoyed it. I borrowed this book from my aunt because I just love Zora Neale Hurston's like writing. It's very specific Southern dialect, and with this one specifically, it wasn't as hard to understand or like get all the cultural context of it as it is with Their Eyes Are Watching God, which was a lot harder for me. But I still like one of my favorite Zora Neale Hurston books, period. And then I read Oh, Time is a Mother by Ocean Vuong, which is it's a poem. It's a book about a poem. So I've read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I really love that writing. It reminds me of Crying Out H Mart. The gripe and the issues are very similar. I'm gonna say Ocean Vuong. This one just did not land for me. Everything is subjective. I love poems that kind of like share a part of someone, but this felt like unfinished draft a little bit. There were some that were really, really good, but others felt a little dragged for me personally. You might like it. And then I read Small Things Like This by Clara Keegan, who is an Irish author, and she was a recommendation from my sister. A lot of these recommendations are from my sister because she kind of knows what's going on with all these contemporary books, because she has like a booktube and she has like a book Instagram, so she's in it, you know. The reading experience was so dark, so gray, so dull. I think I need to reread it again, but I just did not really like the characters, and I don't think that was the point. It's set in Ireland in the 1980s. It follows a coal miner, I believe. And to be honest with you, I don't know. Maybe I read it around Christmas because it's a very Christmassy book. Not the time, not the theme. And yeah, it was okay. Okay, so I realized in the previous video, I only talked about the 20 books and I forgot 4 of the other books that I read. James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time. I thought I didn't read this book, and I was like, I'm trying to read like a lot of James Baldwin's writings, and so I didn't think I read it before, but I have, and of course it's incredible, and I'm glad I reread it again. He basically talks about his experience of living as a Black, gay, religion deconstructing man, you know, was living in 1963, which was a very like fiery and civil rights momentum time. It was obviously talking about racial injustice. So the book consists of like these 2 letters. He wrote it as sort of like the 100th mark of the Emancipation Proclamation. If you've read James Baldwin before, you know he's just really a gifted writer and a gifted like storyteller, and he keeps captivated, and I think that's really hard to do in a form of like a letter especially, and it's just like stuff that you know about generally, but he just spins it in a way that's very like James Baldwin quoted. And then I also read Yoke, which was a recommendation from my friend. It's a fiction that is following this, she's in her I think 20s, and it just follows her making bad decisions, having weird family dynamics, just like really relatable stuff. But she's like the youngest of her family. She basically reconnects with her sister, who is having really like sudden health issues, and so she's seeing her sister in a different way, her older sister, and they're both like you know, children of immigrants, and so they're kind of seeing each other for the first time and kind of debunking a lot of perception about each other. The reading experience was frustrating. It was a beautiful writing. That was not the issue, or the storytelling was beautiful, but it was just like the decisions that she made over and over again. I was like, I just had to put the book down multiple times, because first of all, it resonated deeply, like to me, but also like people that I know in my life. But then it also like, I was like, girl, you know that's not the right decision, and she knows, and she still goes with it. And like, it's also about like her self-worth and finding like meaning and belonging in a place that is she's a transplant at. She lives in New York, which is funny. Like, this is the second book that I read that is of someone who's a child of immigrant transplanting to New York. What are you telling me? And then I read the second book of the saving system. This is like when I really got started, because this is a third series that I'm really getting into this author. I mean, this is her first ever she wrote. So I've read her other books that she's written, and my friend and I are the only ones, like at least in my life, that like we understand how obsessed we are. It's about a character who transmigrates into the story that he usually reads, and he basically like becomes like one of the characters, and it's his journey trying to like kind of change how the story was written initially. And it's just like a mind fuckery. It's really fun. It's really fun adventure. I just finished the last of the book, like I said. 24th book I read. It's funny because this was the first book actually I read in 2025. It is Men We Reaped. I have to kind of bring back what I said about my favorites earlier. This book definitely deserves an honorable mention in a big way. So Jasmine Ward writes about men that she's known in her life, her brother, her dad, just a lot of people that she witnessed disappearing, to drugs, to the streets, to violence by the state, and it's just a retelling of it. But she's an amazing storyteller. I want to read everything she's ever written because I was so captivated. It was also emotionally dense, and just like really vulnerable. She acknowledges a lot of like the survivor guilt that she feels, and it's a snapshot of Southern Black American experience in the early 2000s and the 90s. And she kind of like mirrors the story between her own like getting away from that and trying to find like a footing for herself, and also wanting that belonging, that love, and that I think death that she's not able to feel with anyone, because like that's her family, that's her community, you know. But it's also really heartbreaking. It's really heavy, and when I was done with this book, I felt like I was like I felt like I was carrying like a really heavy tray. That's what it felt like, because it was just like too raw and vulnerable, but also really heartbreaking, filled with grief, like so much grief over and over again. Like, also beautifully written. Yeah, so that's the 24th book. Yeah, I think those are all the books I've read. So yeah, my favorite books so far from the 24th that I've read are Blood Child by Octavia Butler, Queer Art of Failure, and Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Share, what have you been reading? I definitely want to read more like summary books. I don't know, we'll see where we'll go. In terms of what's on my TBR, I have Sula by Tori Morrison, Loveless by Alice Osman. I am going to be reading the last interview with Hannah Arendt, The Secret History, because my sister has been talking about it. And then someone recommended it a couple of years ago. Carolina de Robertis has a book. It's like a novel called Cantoras, and it's a book that has been on my to read for a minute, and I feel like it's a perfect summer book. It's queer, it's by the water. I'm pretty sure. I don't really remember, it's been a while, but yeah, that's mine. So I'll talk to you later because I have a meeting. Okay.